I have been impressed with the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Being willing is not enough. We must do. Leonardo da Vinci.
Bending, Not Breaking. Season 3, Episode 18. Sozin's Comet Part 1. The Phoenix King. And welcome back to another episode of Bending, Not Breaking. I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
I'm Ben Pruitt.
And we've got Max here. He's nudging those dials. He's slightly adjusting things, making us sound good.
How you doing, Max?
I'm the king of nudge, baby.
The Phoenix King. The king of nudging.
Which would you rather be?
I don't know.
Not the king
Max,
of...
if you had an animal that you
Hold
really
on.
liked that describes
I want to
you.
make a clarification. Not the king of nudging, just the king of nudge, baby.
All right. Is there a difference?
I've heard it both ways.
All right. Well,
Cool.
What's an animal that you feel like represents you? An animal that you really like.
A bear?
Great. You would be the Bear King.
Oh, is that what that means?
Koala Bear King.
What about, like...
Ganga Bear King.
Can I just be friends with, like, Winnie the Pooh?
You think you and Winnie the Pooh would get along?
I don't want to, like, be his king, but I'd hang the heck out with Winnie.
Just kick back, right?
When he said...
He does nothing all the time.
I think regularly about the movie Christopher Robin.
Which is strange, because it's fine.
When Ewan McGregor is saying, like, Pooh, why do you have to be so exuberant about everything? And Pooh just says, exuberant.
That is a very Max joke.
I think about that
It's
regularly.
because of Pooh? Like, because he made a Pooh joke?
No, because he put his name in
He
something.
punned it out.
As somebody with a name that can be used in a lot of puns, Max, I appreciate that Pooh did it. Exuberant. I can't tell you how often I think about that.
Again, that movie's fine. It wasn't great.
Eeyore really steals the show, but exuberant is the best moment in cinematic history, probably.
But you also love the quote that they say nothing is impossible, but I do nothing all the time,
I do love that quote, yeah.
which is also fun.
Funnily
think-
enough, we are not watching this on our Patreon, but Max's choice could involve something else. Max, what are you choosing for this coming month?
There's no way to know for sure.
It's a mystery.
But you're choosing, so
Yeah, but I don't know what I'm choosing. Poozing.
Ben, we are looking at Sozin's Comet. This is it.
part 1.
We're in the finale. This is not of the show. There are 4 parts to this episode.
Yeah.
This is what it's all been coming towards.
I
This is all what
know.
it's been accumulating and
just
coming together for.
I can't believe we're almost done. It feels weird.
Yeah, we've watched a lot of Avatar.
Yeah,
A lot.
that's so true.
So many times.
Oof.
Because I would say on average we watch an episode probably 3 times before recording.
At least. If
That's
not
a lot. That's a lot of Avatar.
Well, that and like
And then just
rewatches
having it on.
and then like, yeah, it's interesting.
And we're talking about part 1, The Phoenix King, through a lens of urgency. But before we get into that,
Our patrons picked that.
they did, which I like it. I like it.
I'm
We're
here
gonna
for
talk
it.
about it. But I've got to do my part. I've got to do what I say I will do.
You should always do what you say you will do.
I try.
Dewizwida.
Dwizwida. Terrible acronym, but great leadership. Acronym, I guess.
I tell you what, it's a good acronym if you can remember it, and I remember it.
That's fair. Dwizwida. Do what you say you will do. You got 30 seconds on the clock so I can recap this sucker?
I always have 30 seconds on my clock.
Why?
Oh.
Yeah, why do you just always have 30 seconds queued up on your clock?
Tell me more.
I feel attacked. 3, 2, 1, go.
Aang leaves the training session with the gang and decides to have a beach party. Zuko gets upset and chases Aang around, and then Aang's had enough and then reveals that they are going to attack after the comet. And Zuko says, that's probably not a really good idea. And the gang decides they can do it together. And then they train, and they do the Melon Lord, and then Sokka brings the gang in for this exercise, and they do that. And then Aang realizes he can't he can't kill the Melon Lord. He sleepwalks to an island. They search for him. We cut to Azula going to meet her father and not going on the trip. And then we cut back to Aang and the gang with June. Without Aang. It was just the gang and June from the earlier episodes.
How do you feel about your
So the
recap?
gang goes searching for him.
Without it, but it's not the
But
gut.
they go
the
find,
gut
they
Aang.
go get June.
How do you feel about your recap?
Fine. I feel fine about it.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to feel great, but I feel good.
Max, how do you feel about his recap?
This is not Judge Sunshine time.
Max did not deign to respond.
It seemed it covered much more than I knew about the episode.
There we go. See, we played our purpose. Urgency. Let's be urgent, Ben.
Yeah, you seemed really urgent in your recap.
Let's do what we're supposed to do and be urgent.
Isn't that one of those?
To what is urgency?
Is that one of the Divergent films?
Just urgent.
Yeah.
Half the cast of the original.
Why?
Because there's no dive. It's just the urgent.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. When you have to explain jokes, though. Ben, what is urgency?
Yeah, I mean, urgency is that feeling you get where you have a deadline and you are slowly approaching said deadline, and the urgency is what makes you want to finish what your task is before the deadline. How do you think about it?
I think it can be this thing that requires swift action, or the act of the swiftly acting swiftly, and then it can even be an earnest or persistent quality, maybe insistent, persistent and insistent quality. And so that's what I talked about. What does it mean for you, though? What do you think about when you think of urgent?
Yeah, so what comes up for me is there's this really cool, at work I learned about a diagram that puts into conversation the difference between important and urgent. And I really like that as a concept because if you kind of graph out your tasks as on a 1 to 10 scale of what's urgent versus a 1 to 10 scale of what's important.
On like an X and Y axis.
Sure.
Yeah.
Then what that allows you to see is, oh, this is what I'm putting a lot of my mind and thought process into, but it's not that important, right? Or it's not that urgent. So it might be really important, but it's not on my to-do list this week. This week, because what's urgent, I need to get those done first.
Well, it's interesting because those things will become urgent.
Yeah.
If you don't prep and prioritize and do this, right? If you forget about those things, which happens so often, I think, in a organization. It typically happens.
I'll get to it eventually.
Or I need you to do these things. And yes, that's important, but we're not going to focus on it now, and then we just never end up focusing on it. Or never focus on it with any meaning or significance.
Yeah.
And then you're like, no, now this is urgent, and it's important.
Yeah,
and we should have done this work years ago.
Well, and I think most of the time, what is urgent is also important. That is not always true, but because it is urgent, it receives more importance.
And to who?
Yeah, sure.
Who's it more important to?
Yeah.
And if I'm talking about it in an organizational standpoint, what my boss thinks is important, I hope they share that with me. I hope we're on the same page with that. I hope communication's there. But there's a chance that I might not think that that's the most important thing.
Sure.
And then that turns into, what am I doing, or what's getting left by the wayside?
Well, and if, on the other hand, what they value as important is very urgent to them, but because there has been no communication about it, it is not urgent to you. It may be important to you. You may care deeply about it. But if it's not urgent to you, then are you going to be harshly evaluated on that because you didn't act on their urgency?
Because it was never made clear that that was the expectation.
And let's be real.
That flows right into this first moment.
It sure does.
I felt that greatly. that the understanding of Zuko not understanding why they are not more urgent about these things.
Well, and at first it doesn't come across as him not understanding why. It comes across as they don't care as much as he does, right? That's the story that can be told.
I mean, he is angry. He is livid because they're on the beach and
they're playing in the sand.
He understands what's happening 2 days from now.
Exactly. He was in on the backdoor meeting.
And so he hasn't communicated that with them. There's a lapse there.
But he didn't think he needed to.
They also haven't communicated that they're not planning on attacking till after the comment.
Yes.
And so you get this understanding of when you come to the dichotomy of what is urgent, what is important, communication's pretty key.
Absolutely.
If you're working on a team.
That's exactly what
Even if you're not working on a team, even if you're just working by yourself, plotting and thinking and planning and saying what's urgent, what's important, even on a personal level, and getting a clear idea is going to be helpful.
Yeah, clear is kind, right?
Yes.
Clear is kind, clear is kind, clear is kind. And what we have right now is a communication breakdown where we are assuming that people know what's on our mind. People assume that we are on the same importance spectrum. People assume that we're on the same urgency spectrum. And it's so easy. I can totally see how Zuko would have just assumed that they would all have been on board because everything that they have done to this point has been about this moment. The difference is, like, for some reason, Zuko wasn't involved in that conversation. And I think that that's interesting, right? And
it probably doesn't feel good.
And it probably doesn't feel good, for sure. Like, it's just, I think information in Zuko's case here we can look at it as a cause of urgency, right? To have more information about a event that is coming can increase or reduce the amount of urgency one feels about said event. And because Zuko had something that increased urgency, to me, that is a signal where, okay, that to me is now a flag where, okay, if I'm becoming more urgent based off something that I learned, I need to make sure that other people are hearing that same message. I need to clarify and say, hey, I just heard this. Did you hear the same thing? And if so, this is how I'm feeling. Do you feel like we need to be doing the same thing? Like, it calls me to be more, to clarify.
To seek to understand.
Yeah.
To ask those questions, to recap in a way to make sure that you're getting the message that you need to.
Well, critical thinking,
what's going
right?
on.
It's more about critical thinking because me responding to information is one thing, but it's me assessing how I am responding and making sure that's online with everybody else who is hearing that same information.
Is our goal the same moving forward?
Yes, especially if you're on a team, right? If you're working with others, that's
to save the world.
That's potentially extra special. But yeah, I just feel like, especially like in partnerships where if you might be in a significant other partnership, if you learn something that makes you feel urgent about something that you're both involved in, it seems like
you might want to share it.
You might want to share your feelings on that.
I think, and here's a question, and it's
you can start calling me for dating advice. I will offer it to you, and I will relate it to Avatar in some way.
Avatar dating advice is definitely a Patreon episode in the future. Is lack of preparation a precursor to urgency?
Say that one more time.
Is lack of preparation a precursor to urgency?
That's interesting. So there's a large school of thought regarding procrastination. And they're not the same. Lack of preparation versus procrastination, not necessarily the same thing, but they will tie together, I expect. So a lot of people, there's a lot of research that suggests that people work better under a time constraint.
Fair.
Like, there are people who experience better quality work when they are working under a time constraint.
Totally see it.
There are also people who do not work better in that time frame. And so it's interesting to consider that in your question. So I think that a lack of preparation can indeed create a lot of urgency for something, in the sense that urgency can cause, maybe it's not urgency, maybe to me it's more like dread, because right?
Fair. this heightened anxiety to get something done quickly, I think, is where my head is at.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's the same as urgency. I wonder, like, if that's like under the umbrella of urgency, but not necessarily urgency.
Here's where I think it might be a little bit different. I think preparation and doing the work prior allows you to be a better procrastinator a lot of the times. If you've done the preparation to be able to do certain skills quickly without having to think about it heavily.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably unfair to say that the gang wasn't prepared. They didn't have a lot of time to begin with from season 1 to now. It was a very quick span of Aang knew they were pushing it to learn all bending and all of these things. And yes, all of it happened, but...
And he hasn't mastered the elements
correct.
yet.
So we know that the time frame there wasn't a lot there for him. But I think I'm saying the more prepared you are, the more work that you put forth, the more flexibility it allows you to have in changing plans, having to deal with things that pop up when they pop up that are different. When you put in that work earlier on, it allows you to be more prepared for changes or missteps or anything else to come along the way that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, so I hear you, and I think that this date has been coming regardless of how much they prepared, right?
Correct.
So at some point, the urgency, this is still, like, someone could have said that this is an urgent matter when they, episode 1, season 1.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
100 years before that could have said it was an urgent, right?
Yeah.
And so how are we going to define urgency in the sense that it is no longer urgent once I am prepared? Is it because is it no longer urgent once I have done everything that I can do to the point that I would be
I'm ready for things to happen?
It's all like the hurry up and wait mindset.
Which that's where I think you'd want to be in this moment.
Well, sure,
if you had the time to do it.
But at some point, what does that create in terms of like never enough?
But that's why I think Zuko doesn't feel prepared. He doesn't feel like the gang is prepared. And so I think that's where his urgency is coming from, is we've got to catch up and do this work now so that we can be ready for the next 48 hours. And I'm not seeing that happen, and I'm very confused as to why.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm in school mode right now. So thinking about studying is really something that I find this conversation happens a lot, where a lot of people will study over time and get it all, like they'll do the prep work, if you will, and they'll study over time so that the night before they get a decent night's sleep, they wake up, there's no anxiety about said urgency. The test is still tomorrow, but there's no anxiety regarding that urgency.
I've done the work.
However, there are some people who do all of that studying, still stay up the whole night before, and then suffer because they didn't get enough sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Or like various other things. And so for me, the question is not whether something is urgent or not. It's how am I responding to that urgency?
I think that's fair. Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Because, and I think that's what's really important, is how are we responding to the urgent feeling? Is it causing us anxiety? Is it causing us stress? Whatever it may be.
Elevated blood pressure, all these things that Zuko is clearly experiencing.
Yeah, and it's hard to place judgment on one's response to urgency,
right?
Because we have to figure out where that's coming from. Like, again, it's a communication thing. Help me understand why this is so urgent to you. And again, we see Zuko, more than any of them, knows firsthand what Ozai can do. Zuko has experienced what Ozai can do, right? And has witnessed it and knows what he's planning. And again, I think it comes back to that amount of information. Like, because we see the gang shift in urgency once they have that information.
Oh, yeah. Zuko says...
Big shift.
Hey, waiting might not be a great idea, and they... get on board.
Yeah. Well, and
Toph
then
is the Melon Lord.
Well,
Sokka plays his role. Everyone's jumping in.
And then immediately, with that, Sokka, upon Aang choosing not to, kill the Melon Lord, Sokka gets angry. He says, "What's wrong with you?" right? Whereas if he didn't have this information, I don't know that he would have said that. So at what point does like this reaction to urgency force us outside of our boundaries as well?
Absolutely. Definitely worth something bringing up is when we are living in a place of anxiety and urgency, and it's now and it's got to happen and we've got to do these things, we are more likely to act outside of our value system. And I think we see that. There's a moment in here that I think highlights that. My question was, does urgency increase our opportunity for empathetic missteps? And you see that in Toph.
And I think the answer is yes.
And you see it in Toph and Zuko. This moment where Toph is so excited to have her moment with Zuko, her life-changing field trip.
Yeah.
She bears her heart and soul, which may or may not be emotional floodlighting at the time. It might not have been the place. But she does it. And Zuko is just like, that's rough, buddy. And
Except not in the empathetic way he said it before.
yeah, he was more empathetic when he said it to Sokka. Yeah, that stinks, but we really got to focus on this, is really where
Well,
it came
and
down
again,
to.
his urgency to find Aang because he knows the world is ending makes it so that he's unable to be empathetic in this moment.
Absolutely.
And so I think my question then is, how do we respond to urgency without letting it dictate our values filter? That was a poor way to ask that question.
How do we ensure that our values aren't changed when urgent things arrive?
Sure. How do we make sure that we are responding within our values when under the pressure of urgency?
Right.
That was 3 ways of asking the same question. If you have another way to rephrase
I think we
that
nailed it.
question,
Yeah, we
you
got
can-
I think for me, it's a self-awareness piece that has to exist of how are you feeling about things, and going back to our earlier conversation of what do you need to do to feel good about navigating urgent situations.
Yes.
Do you need to be prepped early on? Because if you do that. Because that's going to help you live inside your value system when urgent things arrive. If working off the fly is something that works well and is something that you thrive in and is something that you can still do with inside your value system, you may be able to do that. But I think you have to have the personal self-awareness to understand the way that you behave. And that takes time. And that takes asking friends and your square sheet, your list.
Well, and it's also one of those things where there's a quote out there somewhere, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's not my responsibility to respond to your emergency. What is it? It's your emergencies are not my emergencies. Something along those lines.
Something along those lines.
Your procrastination is not my emergency.
Another way to phrase it, right?
Is that the way it is? Is that the phrase?
I've heard that before.
I'll look it up. But yes, correct.
But there's this concept where just because you made a mistake, that doesn't mean that it's my emergency now. It doesn't, like, just because you are in this urgent, important mode doesn't mean that I am also in this urgent, important mode. And I think that comes from I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
Poor planning on your part does not necessitate an emergency on mine.
Yes,
Bob Carter.
That's the one that's it. That's the one I heard. So, what are your thoughts on that quote? Because I have mixed feelings.
I think it's fair to set boundaries, and in the guise of setting boundaries, I think that quote makes sense. I've got these things that I have to do. I've got these things that I need to get done. You dropping this on me does not necessarily make it my priority if I'm not in a space where I'm able to handle it.
Yeah.
And sometimes if we can make space to help handle those things, we can give grace and handle those things.
Well, it also is a shift from individual to group. So my poor planning, I'll admit, and we are all working towards the same goal. And you not helping me in this moment is preventing us from achieving a whole.
Well, and it makes me think of group projects that you had to do in class. So we're going to get this done because we need to. And let's have an accountability conversation about what can happen the next time.
Yeah. And again, and I think we have to have follow-up. We have to be in relationship for this. These aren't one one instance things that happen. This is something that is, we have to continue to work on the relationship past these moments. And I think that one of the things I love about love as a concept is that love isn't something we give or get. It's something we nurture and grow, but it doesn't survive when it gets hurt. So when there's shame, blame, disrespect, betrayal, if those instances, that they need to be few and far between, rare, and if they do happen, they have to be healed. So how do we take these moments where we have like lashed out due to this sense of urgency that we feel, we've stepped outside of our boundaries? How do we then step back in and say, I was feeling urgent. This felt really urgent to me. I am sorry that I acted that way. Like, it's hard, right?
It's a culmination of a lot of soft skills, quote unquote soft skills that we have already acknowledged. Soft skills are very hard. They're very
super
difficult
real skills.
But it takes a culmination of that. It takes a self-awareness to be able to say, I'm acting outside of my values. It takes empathy to be able to understand how that came off to someone else. One of my biggest pet peeves, so much humility, is the apology of, I'm sorry you took it that way.
Oh my gosh.
To not do that takes a lot of humility, a lot of self-work. So it's a pet peeve of mine, but I know it's very difficult to not do. And I know why people do it. It's almost like a pseudo protection method of saying, I'm sorry that you took it that way, but I'm a good person, so like you shouldn't have taken it that way, and so it's kind of your fault. To be able to apologize correctly takes work. To be empathetic takes work. To have that humility takes work, and it is a blow to an ego and can potentially be a shame trigger. And so to be able to say, I'm sorry, that was on me, genuinely mean it, and have it received that way, and being okay if it's not received well, because that's the other part, is you've also got to be okay with someone saying, yeah, I'm not in a place to accept that apology right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Right? Like all of that is so much to navigate. And so when you have to do that to repair and mend from the way that you've behaved in urgent situations is a lot. And then it takes a lot of work to not do that when you're in those urgent situations. But I would almost argue that like urgent, frantic could almost be added to the hungry, angry.
Oh, halt.
Yeah, hungry, angry, lonely
and
tired.
And urgent.
And I think I had a question. Do urgencies build upon each other?
Halt to.
Terrible. But do those things build upon each other?
You halt.
Stop. Do those things build upon each other in such a way that the more and more that it happens, the more urgent things become, and then the more urgent stuff that gets piled on behind it only increases that your behavior is going to go further and further down that spiral if you don't find a way to intervene.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I think that's what's beautiful about HALT is that the acronym is meant when you are feeling one of those things, it's a reminder to halt, to stop, to think, to say, hey, am I experiencing one of these things? Okay, we need to like reset. Where's the reset button? I need to be mindful and rethink how I'm engaging in this moment.
Because Zuko could have gotten so much worse for Zuko of, I don't understand why we're not taking this seriously. This is very urgent. Now you're telling me that you're not wanting to do what we said we were going to do, so that's going to add even more stress and anxiety. We're admitting that we aren't ready for all of this. I don't know if we can get to my dad, and all of it just starts to compound on things over and over again.
Yeah, so this is an interesting point that I'm being reminded of. One of the things that I admire about you is that often when in a group of coworkers, when people feel urgent, a lot of times that outward visibility of their sense of urgency is something that people value because it's visible. You can see that they feel urgent.
You're working hard.
Exactly. It tells the story that they understand how urgent the situation is because of their outward reaction to it. But one of the things I admire about you is that you do not react that way.
It's actually gotten me in trouble.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about that? So your mindset in those situations where this is an urgent matter and everybody else is like their voices are and you're just like, I hear that.
Cool. I will go get that done.
I'll go get that done. And you're
That
just
is typically my response.
Well, and it sounds like you don't care.
It has, like,
right. So tell me about that.
What? So there's I remember a very specific moment where someone's paycheck was messed up. Don't know exactly what happened, but it's somewhere along the lines, the paycheck did not come out the way that it needed to. So that employee came up to me and said, "Hey, my paycheck was wrong. We need you to fix it." In my head, I go, "Yeah, that's not okay. We need to fix it." So I say, "Awesome, I will take care of it." And then I turn to my computer and start typing the email to take care of it. But the employee hears, "Okay, I'm going to take care of it." And then I ignored him.
And then you brushed him off.
And I brushed him off. That's what that employee felt like. Very valid. Incredibly valid response to that. So for me, I had to get really good about almost faking urgency, knowing that I'm still tackling things correctly, but I had
faking response to urgency.
Faking the response. I had to go, "Oh no, I'm going to get on the phone right now and I'm going to call them and I'm going to do that because I care about you." But I had to voice that, which is those things existed.
So that's kind of where I was hoping you would go, is what solved the urgency was clarity around how you were going to move forward.
Correct.
Right? It was not like, hey, I'm going to handle this, because what happens is a lot of times urgency and people's response to it often stems from your perception of how much you trust said person.
Yes.
Right? And if I don't have a rapport with the person I'm feeling urgent with, or if they haven't been able to be on that level with me before, I'm going to have a lower level of trust that they sense that level of urgency.
Yep, that was the first time that employee needed something from me of that type of standard. And so they were not familiar with my response to it, which is, "You just said this needs to get done in the next hour. I'm going to do it in the next hour. Cool." Right?
Yeah.
Like that's my mentality. "Oh, I don't know if I can get it done in the hour." My response typically is, "Yeah, I can get that done. All right.
Yep.
Meeting over?
Yeah.
Great. Let's do it."
But so I think one of the things that's interesting here is people like being mirrored, I guess, when they're in an urgent situation.
They want to see that you are taking it as seriously.
They want to be
as
heard.
They
Yeah.
are doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I do it with parents all the time. I hear you say this. This is what I hear you say is the solution to this. Here are the steps that I'm going to take in the next 48 hours. And then I'll follow up with you in 2 days.
So I heard you. This is what I heard you say.
Right.
So I heard you. This is what I heard you say. I'm going to validate what I heard. This is like a natural feeling that you're feeling. That makes sense, right? That makes sense that you feel upset about this.
Yeah.
I also feel upset about that. Like, that's not okay, right? And like, so validating and then clarifying next steps, right?
Yeah.
That's like, those sound like really tactful tools to pull out of this conversation.
And then you have to do what you say. You have to do it.
And then do it with it. Yeah.
So I think if we're talking about navigating urgent situations, the way to be most helpful is, one, if you're someone who needs to be prepared, be prepared. If you're someone that needs to do the work prior, do the work prior. Good communication and ensuring that you are taking time to evaluate whether or not you are acting inside of your values inside of urgent situations. If we do those things, ideally, we're going to handle these urgent, stressful situations a little bit better.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to realize that there will always be things on the docket.
Always.
Right?
Got 8 things on my docket right now.
Yeah.
I cleared off 30 today. 8 more popped up in an hour.
Yeah. So there will always be things on the to-do list. There will always be things that are urgent if we let them control us. The difference is how we respond to the urgency, right? So I advocate talking to people that you trust. Maybe that's a therapist or not, but that might be a great way to seek help.
Does urgency, here's my next question. Does urgency sometimes come out of a place of fear?
Tell me more.
I look at Azula, and she is pushing the people carrying her to go faster. She's clearly anxious. She doesn't want to miss the boat. She wants to be there so that they can leave and doesn't want anything to go wrong. And so she's acting outside of her values. Maybe that is, I don't know. She's acting outside of my values,
Yes.
which, that is what it is. So does fear sometimes play a big role? Does shame play a big role in us becoming more urgent in things? And I think I sometimes correlate like anxious. Like, does fear and anxiety play into this has to get done now, because if it doesn't, then all these other things are going to happen, and here's the domino effect, and so this is why it has to be done in this way in the next 30 minutes. Was that a clear question? Was I clear in any of that, or was that muddled?
Let me rephrase what I heard back to you.
What a great practice of a skill.
I heard the question, does fear cause or create urgency, as to boil it down.
Yes.
And I think the answer is yes. So all of the things that are downward spiral emotions are exacerbated by other downward spiral emotions. And that is my hypothesis. I have no data to support that. Other than to
anecdotal
say,
data.
Yeah, other than to say I have 30 years of life experience. But yeah, I think that when we're tired, when we're scared, when we are overloaded and overwhelmed, I think things become urgent. And I think a lot of what you're speaking to is being overwhelmed is
lots of feelings. It's fair. Azula's feeling lots of things right now.
Yeah, and for Azula specifically, I actually like Azula. I had a question mark. I had why, and you gave me one potential answer, but I'm not sure that's the only possible answer why she could be feeling that urgency in this moment of like go faster. Is it that she is just like she doesn't like to wait because she has been conditioned to not have to wait over the course of her life as princess? Is it because...
Same reason I don't want to wait 2 weeks for a package that I order.
Yeah, I've been conditioned to receive that 2 days later because I have free Prime being a student, which is great.
Unless you're buying a couch from West Elm, then it might be a 6-month delivery.
I also don't recommend using Amazon just because, they're greedy, but sometimes we got to do what we got to do. So moral of the story is buy local.
You vote with your wallet, people. Anyways.
Yeah, vote with wallet. Yes. Yeah. So I don't know why Azula's urgent in this moment.
Could it be excitement? Is it like a kid on Christmas?
Ooh, that could be good too. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe she's about to go take down Ba Sing Se with her dad, who thinks she's super loyal and says so, and that's like his way of showing love. Let's hark back to that episode about loyalty. But yeah, right? I just feel like maybe she's just super excited to express her love and feels urgent about showing her loyalty in this moment.
Or maybe I think you pinpoint it. It could just be the norm, right? I have a norm. I like when I go to movies, when we are able to go to movies, whenever that is. But before all of this happened, I like to leave.
You are so much more urgent about getting to the movie.
hour. I like getting to the theater 30 minutes before the showtime hits, even though I know that the movie won't start until 20 minutes after the showtime because of trailers. I just like to be there. I like to get there and get settled and be there before everyone else in the theaters.
So I'm sitting around the house, grabbing a cookie, doing this, and Sunshine's by the door, tapping his foot, giving me the death stare, and it's just act inside your value, Sunshine.
Yes. I find a sense of love and belonging in the movie theater, and I like to experience that.
I knew it!
Yeah.
I knew you had a secret thing with Haru.
Tough. Oh, tough. Any other big things about urgency that we want to tackle? Are there any moments? Because it really is one almost elongated scene for the most part.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of cuts to different things. It's really just these talking about training, and then Aang, of course, walks away.
I think the only thing that I find interesting is that I think when we are responding to urgency, sometimes we do not allow ourselves time to play and be creative. So
When Aang took necessary time to discover himself, to experience and be self-aware and process.
I think we argue that it's necessary. I wonder if there are people who say that he should have been training that whole time. And I guarantee there are, right?
Right.
There are people that believe that he would have been better at bending. He would have been more equipped for this battle that he's going to step into.
And we get trained from the beginning that if you are not productive for the work that you are getting paid to do, because capitalism, that is your value.
Mm-hmm.
Your value is in how much work you are doing and how productive you can be
And how
for
much
the
you're getting
organization
paid
you
for
can
it.
do. People don't see self-development on the same level as on-the-job work.
That is correct.
When in the reality, it's the metaphor of sharpening your axe, right?
What's that metaphor?
Oh, I
Sunshine?
would love to tell you because it has nothing to do with Avatar, but has everything to do with self-development.
I've never heard this.
There's a lumberjack who's really good at cutting down trees super fast, but over time he slows down a lot to the point where he gets fired. He doesn't understand. He had such good numbers, then he didn't have really good numbers, no idea what was going on. The reality, he wasn't taking time to sharpen his axe. He wasn't taking time to continuing to hone in on the tools that he needed to be successful and focus on those, and so his work suffered because of it.
It also compounds because he was working harder and going slower.
Correct.
As his axe wasn't sharp.
Right. He was swinging faster and harder than all the other lumberjacks,
And he was
but
starting to
was
get
getting
slower
less
and slower.
and less results. Which, that analogy, now that I think about it, is still pretty inside of a capitalistic society. So, but the reality is, self-development is important. It is valuable. It is worth your time. And so, doing that...
More than valuable, it's necessary.
Correct.
It is, it
So
is
Aang-
important.
And Aang doing that was necessary.
Yes.
We see that episodes down the line.
I agree with you.
I know. I'm convincing the listeners that it's necessary. But if you're listening, you probably already think something along those
Yeah,
lines.
if you've gotten to this point, it's very likely.
You are 58 episodes into this podcast. You probably care somewhat about self-development. But any other big things before we jump to our little break and do our devotion and gratitude?
I feel good about a break.
All right, we will be right back in just a moment.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We're excited to get into this segment of the podcast. Sunshine, how are you feeling? Was that a nice break for you?
It was necessary. I needed it. I needed to refill my water.
Was it an urgent break for you?
No, but it was important.
Ooh, I
Yeah.
like it. I like that separation there. Okay, so we are going to be revisiting a sacred practice with our episode, and this again is we're doing sacred imagination again. We got some feedback that was really awesome from a few of our listeners, and we wanted to do it again. So we picked a clip this time, and we want to remind everyone that, again, if you want to get into the space, get into the mindset, and prepare yourself to hear a clip, if you can, find a place where you can sit down and relax and close your eyes. If you're driving, keep your eyes open and pay attention to the road. Or if you're doing something else that requires your attention, it's okay. You can come back to this moment if you want to meditate on it, but we'll still play the clip for you. So this clip is Aang dealing with his struggle upon finding the news from Zuko that he is indeed going to have to face Ozai once the comet hits. So take a minute, take a deep breath, and here is the clip.
Fire Lord Ozai is a horrible person, and the world would probably be better off without him. But there's gotta be another way.
Like what?
I don't know. Maybe we can make some big pots of glue, and then I could use glue bending to stick his arms and legs together so he can't bend anymore.
Yeah, then you can show him his baby pictures and all those happy memories will make him good again.
Do you really think that would work?
No!
This goes against everything I learned from the monks. I can't just go around wiping out people I don't like.
Sure you can. You're the Avatar. If it's in the name of keeping balance, I'm pretty sure the universe will forgive you.
This isn't a joke, Sokka! None of you understands the position I'm in!
Aang, we do understand. It's just...
Just what, Katara? What?
We're trying to help.
Then when you figure out a way for me to beat the Fire Lord without taking his life, I'd love to hear it!
Awesome. So that was an interesting clip. So remember, I probably should have said this before, but you could pick anybody to be during that experience. You could be a fly on the wall. You could be one of the characters. The whole goal is to try and experience something new. And so, Sunshine, as you listen to that clip, what did you experience? Who were you? Where were you? What did you feel, see, sense?
I put myself in Aang's shoes, and I feel desperate. I feel urgency. I feel anxious. I feel like I'm looking for...
Anxious?
Yep. I feel max approval on that. I feel maybe a little hopeless. Maybe I'm at a point where I really don't want to have to live outside of my values, but I think it's inevitable. So I'm searching for any way to not have to do that, which makes Zuko's comment to me feel very cruel.
So I'm sensing from you that you kind of went into fight, flight, or freeze, and you're in like fight mode.
It's just, I think processing mode, I think I go into fight mode when I feel like I'm genuinely looking for help and I get met with jokes.
Yeah.
And then that puts me into fight mode because I'm grasping for anything to potentially hold on to, and I'm being met with what I perceive as not taking this seriously, joking at my expense, not understanding what I'm going through.
Yeah, I think what I'm learning from this is that if I'm in urgent mode, I need to not be around other people until I've processed said urgency, right? I need to, especially someone else who's feeling urgent about the same thing, and especially in like a different way. Yeah, that's interesting. So as you said those things, that's helpful because I kind of responded as Katara. I remember watching this scene and listening to it again just now kind of put me in her shoes of really feeling like as the angrier Aang got, I became more flustered, and I felt myself. We hear her. She gets defensive, and I felt that. I felt so defensive, and I felt so like Aang was accusing me of not doing enough. And it's interesting because like Aang's all of his self-talk is, it's all like shame driving his, like he feels like he's unable to do the things that he's trying to do.
He's alone.
He feels alone, and my reaction is defensive-ness because like it's just like it's counterproductive, my reaction, but that's what I was feeling. And it's interesting how that works. It's so interesting. Yeah, this is lifting up new things. Like I felt my body getting tense. Like my shoulders, I was like, if you watch the clip, Katara's like hugging herself and like it gets tight, and I felt that my shoulders got tight. And yeah, what an interesting way to dive into that moment.
It changes it for sure. You realize it's tense when you're watching it, but by putting yourself in it in that way, you realize how high the stakes really are and how real those feelings are and how much those things can hurt. Those little missteps, which are missteps, which we might say is like, okay, I'm sorry, I was sarcastic. Yeah. Yes, I shouldn't have done that.
And with podcasts, we're like full on hindsight 2020.
Correct. But how often do we do that? How often do we throw out a side comment thinking that it's meant to be a joke and not put in ourselves in the other person's experience and say, I understand why that was hurtful.
It's those casually cruel comments that really grind gears.
Because even by Aang's feeling like you don't get it, I'm feeling alone in this, Katara's going, I've been with you from day one of
Yeah.
you getting out of that iceberg. How do you feel alone right now? And then how are you kind of throwing this back on me like I'm not taking it seriously?
Yeah. Yeah. Oof. Cool. Yeah. Like as you heard that, as you put yourself into that scene, we would love to hear a voicemail of your experience, what it was like to put yourself into that scene and how you responded and what you were feeling.
Because it's worth talking about this, and we're late in the game on this podcast, but this whole show has been our experience, our knowledge. We brought in guests to
sure,
change it
yeah.
up. But we also have to recognize that every listener is going to have a different experience or understanding. And
Absolutely.
so please bring those in. If there's moments where you just totally disagree with us, let us know. Let's talk about it because Ben and I are here to learn.
Y'all, I started listening to the show, and there have been so many times where I've been like, I should have said that differently, and or I disagree with what I said, and so we
A year later,
yeah, when you know better, you do better, and thankfully I'm growing and learning from some of the things that I've said, and
let's think about ways we can grow and get better. Let's do our devotion practice for
that's
this
a
upcoming
good
week.
segue. Good segue.
Air is the element, and we're talking about urgency. What you got?
Urgent air. Urgent air feels like that moment where the Need to Breathe song. It's about needing to breathe. They don't write a song about needing to breathe, but it's the band Need to Breathe. Anyway, urgency and air. Sorry, that was an aside.
Which Need to Breathe song?
I don't know their names.
The one, Max. The one song they have.
They've got more than one song.
Yeah, it's
they've
that
got
one.
Quite a few.
Washed by the Water?
Is it Brother? Does that Need to Breathe?
I don't know.
Anyway, my goal regarding air and urgency is I feel like the breath is something that I come back to a lot. I feel like I need to be more creative, but especially with urgency, taking the time to center myself and really take a deep breath when I'm I'm in urgent mode, and to use the breath as checks and balances to think about the best way to handle the situation. Okay, I'm feeling a sense of urgency that is causing this. I need to step away until I've processed it, or help me deal with it in the moment by taking a deep breath or several and calming my nervous system so that I can appropriately respond in a way that's acting inside my values. So, what is it? Militaristic breathing? What is it? Yogic breathing?
Square breathing.
Square breathing?
Mm-hmm.
That's the one.
Intentional breathing.
Yeah. Mindful breathing?
4 in, hold for 4.
Yeah.
4 out.
Yeah. I'm here for it.
Yeah. I'm going to tag on to that. I think setting urgent times for self-development and things that aren't work is stuff that I need to do, like putting intentional time on the calendar to spend and make those things important and urgent. To put gym time on the calendar and treat that the same way that I treat a to-do list for work. Time with my significant other, put intentional time down and treat that the same way that I treat I've got to get these 8 things done
And
today.
building in white space intentionally.
Correct. Time to just not do anything.
Yeah, I
but
need to do that too.
To give myself life and to breathe air into me, I think that's... I have to start treating those moments with the same intentionality and urgency that I treat my work to-do list. Because if I'm not, then it's going to affect my work in the long run, but it's going to affect my health as well. So that's
health is urgent. Yeah.
I like both of our answers.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
All right, let's get to gratitude.
Ooh,
A little bit of gratitude. All right. Do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love for you to go first.
I'm giving my gratitude
Uh-oh, he starts with a chuckle.
to the marketing team behind Ozai's rebranding.
Okay, tell me more.
They had to make so many banners and come up with a whole new logo and costuming for Ozai. And you know that there was not a lot of time between him having this grand idea and them executing it. So you know they are working tirelessly. You see the way that they treat people that they view as below them, so I'm sure they weren't treated well, and I bet you the stakes were high. If Ozai's Phoenix King emblem and banners were not perfect, it could have been their lives on the line. And so I just, a lot of gratitude for them to navigate that situation, that fear and pain, and hopefully get to a better place outside of that after everything goes down. But to the marketing team who had to do the rebranding for Ozai, I give you thanks. I know that could not have been easy, and I hope you're getting to live the life that you deserve to live, which is one of happiness and joy and love and belonging.
I'm grateful that you were grateful for them. That's awesome. I forgot who I was going to be grateful for. I'm grateful for all of them. Okay, so I'm grateful for so many things. It's really tough to be grateful for everybody. But okay, I'm gonna pick Toph. We haven't picked Toph in a while.
We probably have, but who cares? We love her.
Yeah. So here's the deal with Toph in this episode. She has moments where I'm like, yes, and then she has moments where I'm like, oh, I don't love that.
And somewhere you're like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. And so I am grateful that Toph has learned to become more vulnerable with this group. She is showing more of herself in the sense that she is more aspects of her personality, and she is leaning into sharing things that she wasn't able to before, or that she wouldn't before, and showing affection in new ways. And it makes me sad that Urgent Zuko kind of shot that down, because I worry about the after effects of that. But I am grateful that Toph is growing into the amazing woman that she will become. And this is just a holistic episode in which we get to see different aspects of her that I appreciate.
A lot of great Toph moments in this.
Yeah.
She's the Melon Lord.
She is the Melon Lord. I could have stopped there. I could have just said, I'm grateful for the Melon Lord.
Yep. We all would have known what you meant.
Yeah.
All right. Well, y'all, another episode in the books. 3 more. 3 more left.
That's it. That is it.
If you want us to get to Korra Season 1, head over to Patreon. Help support us over there. We got a goal of 50 patrons.
We had a
bonus episodes, live episodes we're doing now.
We had a really cool live episode.
We've done 2 of them.
And it has been really, really cool to be a part of that.
And getting to talk with
doing
not
with
just
new people
us.
is
Absolutely.
like really cool. It makes the whole process even better.
So you can head over to patreon.com /BNB_pod to see what different options you have to donate there and help support us and get to our goal so we can record Legend of Korra Season 1. Also, BNB_pod on Instagram, Twitter, and now TikTok.
Dun, dun, dun.
Had no idea that was coming down the pipeline, but said, hey, let's do it. And so we do content bursts over there as well. So join us on TikTok, BNB_pod, and then check us out on Facebook.
I'm a fan.
Anything else you want to do before this evening's over, Ben?
I just want to thank you for recording with me. I appreciate it.
I want to thank you and thank Max for all the work that he does. Love having him here. This has been Bending Not Breaking. I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
And I'm Ben Pruitt.
Thank you so much for listening.
You're welcome.